Hey guys, so I had a really hard time connecting to chapter 7, but in chapter 6 I made a couple of connections. At first I made a connection to where it talks about feeling overwhelmed with the amount of course material that people are supposed to memorize for tests and quizzes. I feel like that happens to me with like every single class I've ever taken. Whenever they give you the study guide for the final, I feel like I get really overwhelmed and feel like I'm not going to be able to memorize all of that material that they want us to memorize. And the biggest way that I have to get through that sort of test anxiety is through writing everything that we're supposed to know. So I just write everything, and it takes a long time, but then I know that it's at least locked in my head a little bit more. But I definitely understand what they were saying in the textbook about feeling overwhelmed with the amount of things you're supposed to memorize for those tests. And then on page 99, it talks about the public needing to be satisfied by existing media, but when a new media comes along that satisfies better and more people, that they usually switch to that one. I made that connection to a lot of music because when I like a song, I tend to listen to it over and over and over and over again. And then eventually, probably like a week later, I get really sick of that song and I move to the next song, and then I listen to that song over and over and over and over again, and then I get sick of that song and then I listen to a different song. So I made that connection just because that's what I do a lot, is just listen to the song until something else comes out, and then I find another song to listen to, and then I usually don't listen to the other one as many times through as I do. But I also could make that connection to social media, and I also made that another connection on page 110 to social media, just through when they're talking about MySpace. I feel like that was also one of those things where it's an existing media, but something else came along, Facebook came along, and took over a lot of people and became a lot more popular, and I think that I was definitely part of that, where I was into MySpace, and then Facebook came along and I switched over to Facebook and kind of forgot about MySpace. And it's interesting to go back to MySpace and see like your old posts and your old friends and your old messages, and just see like how things have changed over the past couple of years with that. And MySpace is like completely different than how it used to be, so I think that's really interesting to see that too. As I said, chapter 7 was really hard for me to make connections to. I'm not really a fan of like economy and economics and money talk, so it was really hard for me to get through that chapter. I had to read it a couple of times. I definitely did a rant connection to like Text to World, I guess, when they were showing how much money and the income of the highly paid celebrities. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, and that they were making so much money, and that it's just insane to me. And then I also talked about on page 128, where it talks about the average amount of money people spend on media each year, saying that the average was $1,078, and I felt like that was really high. I feel like I don't spend that much money on media. Nowhere near that. I feel like I spend maybe a couple hundred if I consider all of the CDs I buy, all the music I buy, and all of the movies that I buy, but otherwise I don't feel like I spend anywhere close to that number. I was wondering if that number included the billionaires or not, that have money to spend on media like that. But for a broke college student like me, I do not have that kind of money to spend on just media. And then I did exercise 7.2. So I estimated that I spend about 500 hours on multimedia. And then when I went through the numbers, I realized that it was really hard for me to estimate how much that I actually spend on those certain things. Just because I could think about a week and then multiply that out, and that's what I did. I ended up thinking about how much I spend normally on a week, and then I try to add it up and see what it was. Anyway, so I estimated that I spend about 500 a week, 2 hours reading magazines, which I don't do very often at all. 10 hours reading newspapers, 75 hours reading textbooks and other materials for classes, 30 hours reading for pleasure, which I would love to be higher, but it's just not. About 365 hours listening to the radio. I assume that it was probably on average about an hour a day, because usually the radio is always playing when I'm in the car. Listening to recorded music, probably around 100 hours. Watching films at the theater, which I don't do very often, I estimated at about 20 hours. Watching television, I said 10 hours because I'm not a TV watcher. Working on a computer, 50 hours at least. Communicating on a computer, 50 hours. And playing on a computer, 10 hours. And so my total sum was 722, which was a little bit higher than my estimate, but it wasn't completely out of range either. When I was estimating, I didn't think about how much time I actually spend listening to the radio, and so I think that's what really bumps my numbers up. Alright, see you next week. Bye.